I'd like to talk a little bit about the self-exploration aspect of the course. This is an official part of the course, and it's unexpected that you'll spend time, at least 5 days a week, sitting quietly with yourself, exploring inwardly your own worldview. It's, as I've said before, it's not just that we're looking outwardly at the external world and what other people are thinking and writing about worldviews and ethics, but we're looking inwardly to discover our own worldviews and where they came from, aspects of them, and our hidden assumptions, our unexamined assumptions. So that's a very fundamental part of this course. There's another aspect to the self-reflection, sometimes called mindfulness, sometimes called meditation, whatever you call it. It relax if you're a born-again atheist. This has nothing to do with religion. It's a direct empirical process of examining our inside in the same way we use our senses to examine the external world. So that's all it is. It's a process of exploring inwardly. It's a way of becoming more conscious of our own worldview. So often we think about the world and we try to analyze things, try to figure things out. That's the standard academic approach, and it's valuable. But in some sense, when we do that, we're simply rearranging the deck chairs. That if we want to become aware of new ways of experiencing the world, we need to quiet our mind, or not even quiet our mind as such, but to not identify so closely with our thinking process, believing that we are our thoughts, and allow ourselves to pay attention to insights that might arise from beyond the thinking mind. So that's the process of meditation, is to simply sit with ourselves and pay attention. So in some sense, the most basic instruction for meditation is to sit, or if you want to walk mindfully, that's okay too. Some people feel more comfortable moving. If you do move, it's useful to not get lost in the movement, to be very aware that you're moving. And the idea is to be aware that you're sitting or moving. So you sit or move and you're aware that you're doing that, and all else comes from that. It's quite useful to treat your own breathing as an anchor. Our minds are so undisciplined, so scattered, that it's difficult to notice what's going on because we're all over the place. We're caught in our thinking almost all the time. It's not that thinking is wrong or bad, it's what the mind does. It's a natural part of what it means to be human. The difficulty is that we spend an enormous amount of our time lost in our thinking. We're not even aware that we're thinking. We're simply caught up in the content of our thoughts. And so the sitting practice is to become aware of all aspects of our being, aware of our emotions, aware of our physical sensations, and aware of our thinking process. So it's useful to use the breathing and focus on the breathing, and you don't need to breathe any special way. You just breathe. Sometimes your breathing will be deep and sometimes rapid and shallow. Just let your breathing be what it is. You can focus on the breath coming out of your nostrils, or the rise and fall of your abdomen, or even if you feel the breath circulating through your whole body, whatever. But the idea is to steady the mind in awareness of the breath. And then when other aspects of the mind-body process come to predominate, maybe you feel strong pain or strong emotion or strong judgment or the process of thinking, you can pay attention to those things. And then when they lose, because all phenomena in life arise, last for a while, and then they go away. So if you pay attention to a body sensation, an itch or a pain, and don't do anything about it, You simply notice it. You'll notice that it arises. It's part of your consciousness, your experience, and then it goes away again. And the same thing with thinking. Thoughts arise and they pass away. It's a challenge to remain aware of that process and not get sucked in to the thinking itself and lost in the thinking itself. There's no right way to be when you're meditating. It's not as though if you're not all blissed out and peaceful, you're doing it wrong. If you're present, if you're aware that you're present, you're doing it right. If you're not aware that you're present, you're not doing it at all. And so as soon as you become aware that you've been lost in thinking, just gently let go of your thoughts. Don't judge yourself. That's what we do. And come back to the breathing. If all you do during your period of meditation is to simply get caught in thinking, notice that you've been caught, let go of the thoughts, and come back to your breathing, if you do that over and over and over, you're doing it right. That's fine. It's also useful, especially in terms of the emotions we experience, to not judge ourselves for being angry or sad or depressed or anxious or just stressed out, but just accept all of that as part of our inner weather. We learn in Canada especially that there is weather patterns. It's not always sunny and warm. There's storms, there's rain, there's snow, there's wind, and all of these are part of the patterns of weather. And our task is to learn to be with all these weather patterns and experience them all with some sort of joy and appreciation. It's the same with our inner states. Instead of wanting to have everything peaceful all the time, we simply notice what is and develop a relationship of acceptance, non-judgment, and equanimity around all those different states. And that applies to our own judgment, because we do judge ourselves. That's part of what we do. So instead of judging ourselves for judging ourselves, there's that place of settling back and go, here I am judging myself again. Okay, that's what I'm doing right now. As you do this, you'll become more aware of your own physicality as well, the aliveness that you're part of the biosphere. Experientially, we all know intellectually that we're part of the biosphere, but we often don't actually feel ourselves to be biological creatures, to feel the blood flowing through our bodies and to recognize the physical sensations as simply biological. And so there's that sense of coming to experience ourselves more deeply below this level of conceptual thought and allow ourselves to simply be biological beings. And in that, there's a kind of joy that can arise, a sort of wonder at our own existence, and a wonder at the existence of the universe. We often don't stop to kind of think, hey, this is amazing. What's all this doing here? We simply take it for granted. But what's everything doing here? Why is there something instead of nothing? And then the next step is to notice, to pay attention to our own awareness of the world. That's amazing. The fact not only does that something exists in the physical world, but there's this consciousness, this non-material consciousness that we're aware of ourselves in the world. That's really incredible, and we hardly ever stop to think about that, or to not even think about it, but to notice it. We don't hear about that in the educational setting in particular. And then the next step is to become aware of being aware. That sense not only of being aware of the world, but that awareness of like, wow, what is this thing we call consciousness? This mysterious presence that we feel of being in the world, and this aliveness that we can sense. It's quite astonishing. So that all is part of this practice of inner exploration. So again, it's not trying to figure anything out, although your mind will do that. But this is about something else. This is about allowing yourself to relax out of that analytic mindset And when you sit and pay attention to the fact that you're sitting, you don't do it with an intention to figure anything out. You do it with an intention to simply notice what actually is, who you actually are, just as you are, without trying to change yourself in any way. I hope you enjoy this aspect of the course. It's difficult to get around to it. One of the most difficult things in self-reflective practice is actually doing it. It feels like, oh, I just don't have time to spend 20 minutes. I'm so busy. And yet notice that you find the time to do the readings. You find the time to discuss the readings with your teammates and to post the Moodle. So this is just another aspect of the course, a required aspect of the course, to find 20 minutes 5 times a week to sit with yourself. And if you don't do it for a day, really notice, pay attention the fact that you didn't do it and your reluctance and your resistance, because part of this process is joyful, but it can also be incredibly challenging. We all have dark spots, dark areas, blind spots that we don't really want to look at in ourselves. And so meditation, although it's simple, is definitely not easy. There's been a sense of, for many years, that one of the most difficult things any person can do is get to know themselves. And so in this course, it's an opportunity to begin that process or continue that process of self-exploration. I think that's mostly what I wanted to say about meditation. I'll put a couple of links on the near this podcast if you want to read some more about it. I find Joseph Goldstein and Jack Kornfield are both very good in talking about meditation, giving meditation instruction. But you don't need much more to get started. Simply sit and pay attention and notice that you're sitting. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you online. Thanks.